So it is the start of April, but it has the feeling of early November in Florida and Wisconsin tonight. Live look right now from Wisconsin, 2 House seats. And the most expensive Supreme Court race in history are in the hands of voters right now in Wisconsin and in the state of Florida as well. We are taking you there live later in the hour. A live look as well at the Senate floor. How one senator is now approaching history. Cory Booker now on his 23rd consecutive hour of talking Trump. We'll show you how the resistance in some corners is building. Also tonight, the Trump administration's deportation defense, what they are now saying about the new court documents and a man deported to El Salvador.
This individual was a member, actually a leader, of the brutal MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. But we begin tonight here on The Hill with a live look at the White House and what President Trump is describing as, quote unquote, Liberation Day. In a Rose Garden speech tomorrow, 4 o'clock here on the East Coast, which I would also note, by the way, is precisely when the U.S. stock market closes for the day, the president will outline his sprawling tariff plan for the future. Why, you might be wondering? Well, keep in mind the president, who has railed against harmful trade imbalances against the United States for decades, once as well described himself as the tariff man.
I've settled, a long time ago, but we talk about it. We talk about it a lot, and we want to do what's right for the country and even the world.
It's a tool that he used in his first term to take on China and strike a trade deal. Now, he and the administration have gone much broader, making the case that tariffs can be used to make our borders at the north and south safer. He also says it could even lead to tax cuts. But as economists will tell you, tariffs raise prices. Even the Wall Street Journal's editorial board arguing today that could amount to a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase. And now some Republicans in Congress are being forced to explain why they're the party of tariffs.
I think all of us are anxious to see and will wait to see what the president actually comes out with in terms of tariff policy tomorrow.
The president's absolutely right when he says that we have to think about America's interest first, because if we don't, we're not going to maintain our status as the great superpower.
Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, tells us why the president is going down this road in a moment. Michael Schnell on how this is being received. But we begin tonight with our Robert Sherman over at a White House that is touting a policy that it says will make America wealthy again. Robert?
Yeah, Blake, with the White House pointing to tomorrow, April 2nd, as the day for retaliatory tariffs. Liberation Day, Tariff Day, those are some of the terms that the administration is using as the president frames this as a cornerstone of his presidency, saying tariffs are necessary to re-level the global trade playing field, with the White House promising that better days are coming starting tomorrow. Some Americans have certainly felt the short-term impacts in their wallets and their retirement accounts, with plenty of market volatility in recent weeks, with the White House downplaying those concerns, saying their thesis is that these policies will help Americans in the mainstream long-term. Take a listen.
The president has been asked and answered this question about the stock market and whether he's watching it. And I've said, and he has said, the market is a snapshot in time. The president wants to ensure that all Americans make out well, particularly Main Street. That's the focus of these tariffs.
But non-Americans have a bit of a different view on all of this. Canada insisting they will stand their ground, as the EU says they are ready to respond and retaliate with economic actions of their own if the White House chooses to press forward, with the president saying that he intends to give remarks in the Rose Garden tomorrow, and the White House says that those tariffs will go into effect immediately. Blake?
Immediately, Rose Garden, 4 o'clock tomorrow. We'll see what the president does then. Robert Sherman live at the White House tonight. Robert, thank you. Down now to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, our Michael Schnell up on Capitol Hill for us tonight. Michael, congressional reporter for The Hill. Hello. It's a fascinating dynamic, Michael, because now all of a sudden you've got Republicans in this town, in that building where you are, being asked time and time again, well, do you support tariffs? What are they saying tonight?
Yeah, Blake, exactly. And this has all been in the lead up of tomorrow's Liberation Day, as President Trump is putting it. Of course, we hear from the president's most ardent supporters up here that the tariff strategy makes sense. But we heard from a number of Republicans today who voiced some concern and skepticism about what these tariffs could mean. Of course, there's the idea that they could raise prices, some concerns for that for constituents across the country. There's also the concern that this could lead to a trade war between the U.S. and other countries. One congressman who we heard from, moderate Republican Don Bacon, he's from Nebraska, he expressed some concerns and skepticism that the tariffs may not actually lead to more manufacturing in the U.S., which is something the White House has wanted. Take a listen.
I think he has something with reciprocal trade. It should be about a fair trade. Yeah. But if it's just leveling tariffs to help bring business back here, I don't think that's worked in the past.
And now, Blake, it's not just on the House side. We're hearing some of these concerns and skepticism on the Senate side as well. In fact, there's right now a Democratic-led resolution in the Senate that would call on the Trump administration to revoke those 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Now, this is expected to come up for a vote soon, and it would only take a simple majority vote to be adopted. Now, of course, Republicans have the majority in the Senate, but there may actually be enough GOP senators who buck the party, cross the aisle, and support Democrats on this endeavor. One person who says they're going to is Senator Rand Paul, somebody who has been a noted critic of tariffs in the past. He believes in free trade. Another person to keep an eye on, Blake, Senator Lisa Murkowski. She said today that she's going to decide what to do, what's in the best interest for her state. And Blake, she said that voting for this resolution might make sense.
Our Michael Schnell, live tonight in the halls of the Capitol. Michael, thank you. All right, so President Trump telegraphed this move from the campaign trail to the very moment that he once again became president.
I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens.
And while the president has argued that it's foreign companies and foreign countries who pay the tariff fees, NewsNation is also told that when the president spoke to the top leaders of the major domestic automakers last month, he warned them not to raise prices. Or Kelly Meyer asking the White House press secretary today how all that squares.
Why did he have to tell the domestic automakers not to raise prices? Well, that was a private conversation that was had. I'm not sure if that comment was made or was not made. But as for what the president said in his Inauguration Day speech, he's absolutely correct.
Joining me now, Mick Mulvaney, Trump's former chief of staff in the first administration, former budget director as well, NewsNation contributor. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
Welcome back from your world travels.
Oh, it's always good to be here.
You were the
Did anything happen while I was gone?
You were the chief of staff in the first trade war.
Yeah.
Tell me why Donald Trump is going down this path right now.
Yeah. What you're going to see tomorrow, this is different. The stuff we've heard up to now is about changing policy, getting the Mexicans to change their policy on immigration, drugs, Canadians, the thing in Colombia, et cetera. This is different. This broad package is more about his larger plan to try and rebuild the American middle class, to rebuild American manufacturing. That's what this is about. They're counting on these tariffs to encourage people to start making things here. Now, it's a risky strategy because, as Don Bacon points out, it doesn't always work.
Why does he believe that this is the way to do it?
Because it is a traditional way. It's not unusual. He's not the first person to think this. Keep in mind, Donald Trump grew up in the 1970s and 80s when America was making steel and making ships and making textiles and furniture and stuff. And he wants to sort of get back to that. He knew there was a healthy middle class then. It's been gutted. Look, I live in the Southeast. Not anybody works in textiles anymore. Right. So he's got that perspective of how do we get back to rebuilding the middle class. Again, on paper, it looks fine. It could be really, really difficult to do. It might actually backfire.
And as the former chief of staff, what would you be advising him on that front?
If there's nobody in that room telling him, Mr. President, that's fine. We'll back you if this is what you want to do. But just be aware, these are the risks. 1, 2, 3. The stock markets can tank. We could go into recession. You could end up in a trade war that's devastating the American economy. If they haven't had that discussion yet, then he needs to start firing people. Because if everybody's telling him this is going to be easy, he's getting really bad advice.
Great question by Kelly there in the briefing room today, which is, You know, if you're saying that the foreign companies and the countries are the ones who eat the cost, then why'd you need to warn the domestic automakers not to raise prices? And you hit on this as well in your article in The Hill that just dropped. The White House's mixed messages on its tariff policy is what you write. Here's what you say. You say Trump has strong political, philosophical, economic, and even cultural reasons for taking a hard line on tariffs. He doesn't need people coming out to defend him by using fuzzy math that every college freshman in Econ 101 can spot as political rather than economic. What do you mean here?
This is in response to Peter Navarro's comment about how these tariffs are going to raise $600 billion a year, $6 trillion over 10 years. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
You can't have money from tariffs and have people set up business here. You're going to have one or the other. You can have a mix of the two, but you can't have them both. And that's what the White House, through people like Peter Navarro, is trying to tell people. That's over-promising and under-delivering. What the hell's your name? I keep forgetting.
Blake. You were in Australia 36 hours ago.
I'm in a different day. But you can't have it both ways, okay? And if you overpromise and underdeliver, that's when people start making you pay a price at the polls.
Here's the tariffs, sort of what's happening right now and what could come in the future. Trump, as we know, has already taken actions. Mick, you can see on the screen there what's already been enacted, 25% tariffs on several goods. What may or may not come tomorrow, and then what could happen down the road as well. At the end of the day, and again, you were Trump's former budget director, what do you think the end result here is for the American consumer?
I think I know what comes first. I know for sure what happens is prices are going to go up.
For sure.
No
matter what.
Prices are going up.
Okay.
It just is. The question is, over the course of time, will the markets adjust to where prices start to come down? Will the other Trump initiatives like deregulation, tax policy, kick in to sort of do what we did in the first term, which is have some tariffs, not anything like the tariffs he's talking about tomorrow. We had tariffs, we had some tariffs, we had great unemployment numbers, but we had no inflation. You try to get back to that. You might get back to that, but I think the one thing you know for sure is that prices are going to go up in the short term.
You did that on No Sleep. You want to stick around for the rest of the show?
I'm going to take a nap between now and the next block.
You and Cory Booker might be it. All right. Thank you, sir. Catch you later in the show. Appreciate it. Mick Mulvaney. Still to come here on The Hill. Super Tuesday of a different kind. A live look at voting centers. Florida and Wisconsin. They are hosting the first major elections of the president's second term. We are live from both states. Plus, land wars, a showdown between Texas and the drug cartels. Our next guest explains why she is now asking President Trump for help. And speaking of the president, why he's facing growing resistance from within his own party. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the Center of Politics. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. We're back in 4 minutes, other side.
This is NewsNation, ranked least biased among news channels. That's why we're America's fastest growing cable news network. Go to joinnn.com to see for yourself.
Tonight, the White House is pushing back on a filing from the Department of Justice. The DOJ now saying a Maryland man who was deported to El Salvador due to a quote-unquote administrative error. However, the White House says that only tells part of the story.
The administration maintains the position that this individual who was deported to El Salvador and will not be returning to our country was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang.
Along the southern border, the number's much more clear. NewsNation is told the number of southern border encounters last month totaled nearly 7,200. That is down some 95% from this time last year, and even more if you compare it to 2023 and 2022. But there's clearly still more to be done at the border. For example, in Texas, the land commissioner there, Don Buckingham, now asking the Trump administration to seize control of several pieces of land in the Rio Grande River. That separates the U.S. from Mexico. She's now written to the president saying that those islands, as they are being used by the cartels for smuggling operations and being used as stash sites. You might wonder, how could that be, given it's land that is on the U.S. side? Commissioner Buckingham with us now here on The Hill, joining us live tonight in studio. Nice to see you, Dawn. Thanks for being here, as always.
Always great to be on.
So you just wrote to the president today about this. But explain, and I'll get to that in a second, but explain to me, you have this land that is north of the Rio Grande that you say is sort of being controlled by the cartels and stash sites. How?
It's confusing because
for the average person, they might be like, how's this possible?
Right. Until these islands are declared, either the United States or Mexico, neither law enforcement or military from either country can step foot on them. Of course, once they're declared, then military can step in or law enforcement can step in and obey our laws. So what we're doing is literally seeking out these safe havens for the cartels, these lawless areas, because they were not under a jurisdiction until formally claimed. The General Land Office in Texas is, of course, the mapping entity for the state. We determine the center of the river, and by our treaty with Mexico, anything north of the center of the river is the United States.
So what's happening there right now? Because you say still needs to be declared, but these are cartel sites. So if you were to go there right now, and again, this is north of the Rio Grande, if you were to go there right now, what would you see?
Well, right now they're Texas. So you would see the Texas Military Department and the Department of Public Safety, of course, led by Governor Abbott, is probably going to come in and get these lands cleared very quickly, get the concertina wire up, take away the stronghold of the cartels, get rid of the drugs, the weapons, the abused people, and get complete operational control of those sections of the border. You wrote to the president today. It was a letter dated or yesterday, just the other day. You want Border Patrol basically to work with state authorities. Have you heard back from the White House? You're obviously here with us in Washington. Have you heard back from the Trump administration? Where does that stand? Well, we are working seamlessly. Texas is working seamlessly, of course, with the federal government at this point. They were waiting for us to get the islands declared before they could step foot on them. One of the islands is slightly complicated. Part of it is actually federal land. Part of it is state land. Okay. It's a complicated thing that we probably don't have enough time to fully understand. But we just wanted to let them know, hey, we've got these islands declared. They are, in fact, the United States. It is time to get these cartels off of them and get complete operational control of our border. The big story here, one of them, is tariffs, right? We know how the president has used tariffs to try to negotiate with Mexico. We're going to have the big announcement tomorrow coming out of the White House, 4 o'clock from the Rose Garden. Does that complicate your job in any way? Does that complicate what's going on in Texas and down at the southern border? Absolutely not. In this context, the facts... How not? Because there's going to be some tough conversations, right, between the U.S. and Mexico going forward. There are, and there always have been. There are lots of conflicts between Mexico and the United States, whether you get to the water that they're not giving us based on their treaty. There's a lot of conflict there. But regardless, getting complete operational control of our border is our primary objective, and we're going to do it. Kristi Noem said the other day, it's not 100%, but it's close to. Is that where you think it is? We have seen a 95% reduction. We are getting rid of these last strongholds. Absolutely. Kristi Noem, the Trump administration, Texas, we're all working together to get it done. We'll leave it there. Don Buckingham is the land commissioner. Thanks for being with us again. My pleasure. Talk to you soon. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill tonight. It's election day, don't you know? Polls closing in Florida and Wisconsin. In Florida, there are 2 House races up for grabs, but one that we are really keeping our eyes on. And in Wisconsin, an historic Supreme Court race, the most amount of money ever spent on a state Supreme Court race. Ron Johnson is the top Republican in Wisconsin. He joins us live on the other side. And a live look at the White House, where they say tomorrow is going to be Liberation Day, but is the president about to see some organized resistance? What about from his side of the aisle? Stay with us here on the Hill.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app. Or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Do you remember this from 2000? The famed Tim Russert exclaiming, it's all about Florida, Florida, Florida. Well, tonight here on April 1st, 2025, the spotlight once again shining on the Sunshine State. A live look right now in Ormond Beach. That is in the northeast part of the state, just a little north there of Daytona Beach. Polls set to close in about 30 minutes. Why? Well, it has to do with the name that you probably know well by now. It is the special election for Mike Waltz's old House seat, the one that he gave up to become President Trump's national security advisor. It's a seat that Waltz easily won by 33 points just 5 months ago. But tonight, Washington is watching this one as every seat in the House matters. And it's believed that this race could potentially be close. For example, the Florida governor, the Republican Ron DeSantis, with this warning earlier today.
I think Trump won it by 30. I think I won it by like 35 or something, or 37. If there's an underperformance, they're going to say, see, it shows the voters are rejecting. It has nothing to do with that. This is a rejection of the specific candidate.
All right. Live look also in Wisconsin as voters in that state are taken to the polls as well on an open state Supreme Court seat. A liberal and a conservative on the ballot. All sorts of outside money flowing in, as it is now the most expensive state Supreme Court race ever. Even Elon Musk, cheesehead and all, showing up just days before the vote and making this claim.
I feel like this is one of those things that may not seem that it's going to affect the entire destiny of humanity, but I think it will.
To our Alex Capriello in the Midwest in a moment, but first to our Brooke Schaefer, live tonight in Northeast Florida. Brooke?
Hey, Blake. Yeah, two special elections happening in Florida right now. One to fill Mike Waltz's seat, the other to fill an empty seat from Matt Gaetz. So when these polls close in about 30 minutes here in Florida, a Democrat win would really be stunning here. But Democrats have made a real play in these districts that Trump won in November by more than 30 points. Democrats, they have flooded these two districts with millions of dollars, especially here where we are in District 6. Here, the Democrat in this area has raised about $9 million, far outpacing Republican fundraising by about 10-1. And that has raised some serious concerns within the GOP. As you mentioned, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been vocal about what he believes will be an underperformance by Republicans tonight. In these deep red districts, Democrats are hoping again for what would be a stunning upset, or at the very least, they're looking to close the gap here, already arguing that any kind of underperformance from Republicans in these deep red districts is really evidence, they believe, of trouble within the GOP. We'll head now to Alex and that big battle in Wisconsin.
Yeah, hey there, Brooke. Turnout has been impressive all election day. I've been to two different polling locations, one about 60 miles to the west in Dane County, which is home to Madison, and then I'm currently in Waukesha, just outside of Milwaukee. And both locations tell me that they had voters lining up outside the door before these polling locations even opened up for the day. It's a bit unusual for a special election that's happening in April, but so much attention nationally is being poured into this race. It's a temperature check, a litmus test, so to speak, for the Trump administration and the way that our country is currently heading. The Republican-backed candidate, Brad Schimmel, has the support of President Donald Trump as well as billionaire Elon Musk. We just saw that video of him from Green Bay just 2 days ago. As for the Democrat-backed candidate, she has the endorsement of former President Barack Obama as well as billionaire George Soros and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. So much is on the line when you consider what's happening in Wisconsin and for the rest of the nation in the future when it comes to reproductive rights as well as potential redistricting of the congressional map. Blake?
Alex Capriello in Waukesha, Brooke Schaefer in Ormond Beach. Thank you to you both tonight. Joining us now is the top Republican in the state of Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson, with us tonight here on the Hill. Hello, sir.
Well, Blake, nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you, and thanks for being in. It is an interesting state, Wisconsin, when you think about it, for lots of reasons. The president won it in 24, but the Democratic senator who was on the ballot won it. 6 of the 8 House seats went Republican, but there's a Democrat who's the governor, right? So it's almost like the purple of purple states right now. How would you describe, with this huge battle in your state right now, sort of where Wisconsin is politically?
It's a battleground state. You know, and you say it's solidly purple. This race is really demonstrating what's happening, I think, nationally in terms of what's happening on the courts and the struggle between those of us who believe courts ought to stay within their constitutional limitations of, interpreting and then applying the law, not altering it, not making law from the bench, right. Versus what the radical left wants to do, which is, utilize super legislators, elect people that will rule based on their policy preference, based on their ideology. And we're seeing that happen with these district court judges issuing national injunctions against what President Trump, the duly elected president, promised he would do. So this is what that battle's all about.
You were there with Elon Musk over the weekend in your state. that claim that this is basically Western civilization at stake, there's a lot of focus on your state, Senator, but what really is sort of politically at stake here? I think you would agree that goes a little far.
Well, if you believe in the butterfly effect.
I believe in the butterfly effect. I certainly do, but I think that one goes a little far.
Right. So anyway, no, but it has national implications because Hakeem Jeffries, the donors, Susan Crawford herself, in basically guaranteeing that if she gets elected, we retain the liberal majority on the court, they will redistrict congressional seats.
That's the worry, is that I just told you that 2 of the 8 congressional seats were run by 6 Republicans in the last go-around. That's sort of the battle here, right, is what does the congressional map look like?
And again, we've had maps drawn by our legislator, which is probably as good a process you can have. Then you've got maps drawn by the governor and basically blessed by the Supreme Court. That I'd say is less democratic, and that's exactly what happened again here in terms of those two, primarily Derek Van Orden and Brian Stile. So those seats are at risk. That could help potentially Democrats regain the majority in the House. And my appeal certainly to any of the 1.7 million people that voted for Trump, if you want President Trump to be effective for the full 4 years, if you don't want to see another impeachment trial, get out there and vote for Brad Schimmel. Let's make sure that we turn the court back to a court that has judges and justices. Okay. That's a significant difference, too. We want people that apply the law. I don't like a lot of laws, so I'm not going to like a lot of the rulings, but that we want justices to stay within the constitutional constraints.
This comes in a unique, the election night tonight, whether you're in Wisconsin or Florida, comes in a unique moment, which is the president going forward tomorrow on tariffs. And the reality is that's going to dominate a lot of the conversation, as you know very well, Senator, as folks start to potentially feel price hikes. Do you think that the president is wise going down that path? We don't have all the details, but do you think he's wise going down this path of tariffs?
Let's put it this way. The president is very well aware of those concerns and of the potential risks. He's got great economic advisors, people like Kevin Hassett, Scott Bessent. These are smart people. And tariffs are a double-edged sword. I mean, there's no doubt about it that we have trading partners that don't treat us fairly. And I want free, but I need fair trade as well. President Trump demonstrated that he was able to use the tariff threat very effectively, for example, to secure the border in his first term, okay? So, again, nobody knows exactly what he's thinking. Nobody knows how long these things would last. He's obviously trying, when he's talking about reciprocal tariffs, he's trying to get free and fair trade. But he understands this is kind of a high-risk proposition. You take a look at what's happened in the stock market. I'm certainly concerned. We have a lot of constituents in manufacturing and farming who are also concerned. But again, this isn't something that President Trump is not aware of.
Right. Have you expressed this to him? Because we're starting to hear some Republicans now, start to worry about this a little.
He's well aware. But again, President Trump's been pretty smart in doing these things. He's used them effectively. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and we'll monitor the situation.
I thank you for coming on tonight. Wisconsin got a big race there back at home. Senator Ron Johnson, thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate you, sir. Talk again soon. All right, so polls close 7 o'clock Eastern in Florida's 6th Congressional District. In Wisconsin, they close a little more than 2 hours from now, 9 o'clock Eastern. The Badger State has seen a boost in turnout from the last time a state Supreme Court seat was on the ballot. It's estimated that 2.5 million votes will be cast. In 2023, there was almost 2 million votes statewide. That's about a 34% increase from last time. Look who is here with us now. You know him. He's the man behind the numbers. Scott Traynor, Data Science Director over at DDHQ. What's up, buddy?
Well caffeinated, ready for tonight.
This is your night. This is Traynor's moment. It's an election day. Let's start in Florida. So this is the northeast part, Michael Waltz's seat. You weren't even thinking about this on election night in November. Traynor never even thought about this, okay? And you knew that this race was coming at around this time. And look at where we are right now with the absentee ballot voting. So Waltz won that with by 33 points last go-around. And the absentee ballots and early voting, Traynor, tells a much different story right now.
Yeah, when it started out, it started tied. Democrat, Republican ballots were even. As we go into polls closing in just under an hour here, it looks like the Republican will be leading, that's Randy Fine, by about 12 to 13 points.
So here's the number, right? I just showed you plus 33, and this doesn't equate to votes, but that's a different equation there, Scott.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what you're looking at on the screen. Those are the people who have registered Republican, Democrat, or no affiliation. Have they returned their ballots? So we understand that. We understand what the polling is, and then we project that the turnout is going to favor the Republican by about 12 or 13 going into election night, which we'll see where it ends up.
Money on top of money on top of money on top of more money in Wisconsin. This is a Supreme Court seat. What do you know about it?
Look, Wisconsin loves these off-season elections, right? This is a race no one cares about except for like 5 political nerds like me and my team. But when Elon Musk went out on Sunday night, handed out multi-million-dollar checks, talked about how this race could determine the House in 2026, he's not wrong, by the way. The state Supreme Court in Wisconsin may or may not redraw some lines for some Wisconsin congressional districts, and we know the House is razor thin. So $90 million, I mean, that's more than Senator Ron Johnson's last Senate campaign.
And what are you watching for once the numbers start rolling in, real quick?
I'm looking for, it looks like Crawford's going to start with a little bit of a head. If the first votes, when they first drop, she's not ahead, expect it to be a long night, and maybe Schimmel can pull it out. If the first votes drop and she's ahead, it looks like she's probably going to eke it out.
It's kind of night. Scott Traynor, Data Science Director, DDHQ, the man behind the numbers. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Enjoy tonight. All right, coming up, President Trump says it's Liberation Day.
My understanding is that the tariff announcement will come tomorrow. They will be effective immediately. And the president has been teasing this for quite some time, as you know.
But is everyone in the president's party on board? You just heard a little, maybe we got to wait and see how this all plays out. Full panel, other side of the break. Stay with us.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Number one, you're a cheap Trump.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
You have a tie on that goes with nothing else.
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
I'm Blake Berman, and you're listening to NewsNation, news for all America. To find NewsNation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Resistance in a couple different forms tonight, both sides of the aisle. Would you look at this? This is a live look at the Senate floor inside the United States Capitol. The New Jersey Senator Cory Booker has been speaking now, get this, for close to 24 consecutive hours, lashing out against President Trump in just about every facet he can muster. Booker is about 35 minutes away from breaking the all-time record held by Senator Strom Thurmond in 1952, filibustered against the Civil Rights Act for 24 hours and 18 minutes. Here's Booker.
What the president has done is left our allies feeling abandoned, feeling degraded and insulted. He's left our adversaries feeling emboldened, and has done things that has hurt our national security, that has made Americans less safe.
And tonight, a House divided over how to handle new parents in Congress. The Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna has been pushing for proxy voting, which would allow for new parents to vote essentially remotely in the first 12 weeks of a child's life. Without it, there's this. Congresswoman Brittany Peterson, again, showing up to work with her newborn baby. This was the House floor earlier today. Democrats, Luna, and 8 other Republicans were able to successfully push back against the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, today as he tries to shut down proxy voting, given there are constitutional concerns with the concept from the House Speaker and many conservative Republicans as well. Full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former chief of staff in the first Trump administration. Dan Cannon, former Battleground States director for the Biden-Harris campaigns. Jessica Anderson, former budget official in the first Trump White House. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. You can push back.
I like pushing back on Mick. What's his name again? I'm sure. I like the fact Cory Booker may be the only person in this town more tired than I am right now.
Mick just flew in from Australia.
He's about to be one of the richest people in this town, too. The donations come in.
So I say to Cannon, and before the show, I said, does this end with Cory Booker saying, and that's why I'm running for president in 2028?
No, it doesn't.
Well, so then what's this about?
Two things. One, I think that people, Democrats certainly, want their party to stand up and fight and do something. And I think there's lots of conversation happening about what tactic makes sense, what tactic does not make sense, the shutdown fight. I think what Booker is doing is whatever you can do. And I don't believe a certain tactic, good or bad or indifferent, is going to make or break our politics in 2026.
Okay.
But get on the field, try some things, get out there. And I will say this, 175 million likes on the TikTok live stream of what he's doing right now.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
That's a lot.
Likes, not just views, likes. The second thing I'd say is I saw Cory Booker last week at an event, and he gave a speech I'd not heard him give before in a small group about his relationship to John Lewis and what John Lewis meant to him when he was first running for mayor, when he was a child, later on became a senator. And I got the sense, thinking about that today and watching what he's doing, that he was maybe subconsciously winding himself up to do whatever he could do, whatever John Lewis might do in this
He led with that. The beginning of this marathon speech was, I've been thinking about John Lewis and I'm going to get into good trouble. And I'm maybe doing that here today. So you're absolutely right. He led with that. I think that's what he's channeling this moment. I think a lot of Democrats, are anxious that they don't see a fight within the Democratic Party. And they don't see leadership at the moment. While it's there, I think they're trying to figure out how to connect with the base of the party. I think Cory Booker's going to have a challenge. How do you sustain this moment beyond the speech, and how do you adapt it wider movement and not make it just about you?
The short answer to your question, though, is yes, he's running for president. That's what this is. This is a good way to do it.
You think so?
I do. Listen, I have nothing but the highest regard for what he's doing. I think this is the appropriate use. And Jessica and I were talking before the show. This is technically not a filibuster because he's not preventing the consideration of a piece of legislation. But it's really close. And this is what it's really for. I love it when senators do this. When you care enough about something to go and put yourself through this is the filibuster the way it's supposed to work. I don't agree with a thing he said, but I do respect the fact that he's using the tools properly.
I think his challenge is actually the same challenge that we saw with Governor Newsom in his podcast a few weeks ago, saying, no, women shouldn't be allowed in boys' sports, or men shouldn't be allowed in women's sports. However, it's all talk. So where does this go from here? Does this actually become the clarion call for the Democratic Party? Do they all of a sudden have a leader, a mandate, a focus? Otherwise, all I just hear is no, no, no on Trump, and that's it.
So you bring up Gavin Newsom. He was speaking to Bill Maher the other night. Roll that real quick.
And by the way, or the notion we just have to continue to talk to ourselves or we're in the same damn echo chamber. These guys are crushing us. The Democratic brand is toxic right now.
So that was Newsom.
Yeah.
Is that what the resistance are trying to figure out what comes next? Is that the right way to go about it?
The single best prism to look at the 2024 election is through how people consume media. If you get your news from what we all think of as traditional news sources, Democrats dominated. If you get your news from social media or don't watch a lot of news, Trump dominated. And what Booker is doing, back to the TikTok thing, is reaching people who otherwise we are just not reaching. We go on MSNBC all the time, right? That's just not cutting it.
Come on, you should
well, I'm reaching people here.
No, I know. You're doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Other side of the aisle. It is fascinating. Anna Paulina Luna.
Yeah.
There is, not to get into all the weeds here, but basically she is challenging her own party, saying, you know what, it is absurd in 2025 that new mothers / new parents cannot vote remotely when they have a child. You see Brittany Peterson on the House floor, but yet there's conservatives saying, wait a minute, there's constitutional concerns here.
So I think the emotions of this we can all agree on, which is that new mothers need the opportunity to leave and cleave with their babies, and they should be given that space. I don't think there's disagreement of that in the Republican Party. The problem is how to do it. And that's where the fracture is. Is it a piece of legislation? Or is it a constitutional
amendment? But that's where I would say, doesn't action speak louder than words?
Yeah, absolutely. So they should have this debate and figure out what vehicle, whether it's a piece of legislation or a constitutional amendment, that allows that space. Now, the question on proxy voting, the House has figured this out for a while. They've been doing it since before COVID, so it's very normal.
Does anybody know what the Constitution is?
You don't need a constitutional amendment.
Because the Constitution says the House and the Senate shall make their own rules.
Correct. And I did a extensive study for an op-ed I wrote for thehill.com, which is where it looked at electronic voting. We went through this same debate. First presented on the floor in 1810. First electronic voting, 1976. So there's the constitutionality questions are not necessarily tied to this. And it has worked before. We've shown it can be secure. We've shown that if you put rules in place, then you need to enforce those rules so you don't misuse it. It can be a very powerful tool for new moms and new dads. And if we're going to be a Congress to attract real folks, like people that are new parents and that represent all diversity points of life, then this needs to happen. And you got to ask Republicans, why are they so hesitant?
Let me ask you this, Mick. This is obviously an issue, right?
Yeah.
And so it's happening right now. What about it exposing a crack potentially within the Republican Party and what it could mean down the road is they're going to need every single vote for the president's signature legislative item?
There's absolutely cracks in my party. There's cracks in their party. There's only two parties in the country of 350. You're going to have cracks. The question is, how do you work through it? I'm a little surprised that the leadership's reaction to this was to shut down the building for a week because they didn't know what to do.
They should have figured out what vehicle to provide this in. They should have figured that out and then moved on to more important
But don't you think, Mick, that this shows the reality of this House caucus? They are united when Donald Trump binds them together. And when he doesn't care, trouble's
the flip side of that, though, is look, a couple weeks ago, the Democrats couldn't even talk to each other about how to handle a funding bill. So they don't.
As someone who's used the charge petition, real quick, someone who's used it, this is a sign of weakness for any speaker. Pelosi would do everything she could to keep these from coming to the floor because it's a sign of weakness.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. By the way, I would note the White House was asked about this today, and they said, we'll get you an answer soon. So we'll see where President Trump stands on it. All right, coming up. It is April Fool's Day, don't you know? Some people think that the government investing in UFO research is all but one big joke. But I'm going to show you why it's not, and the connection to April Fools on the other side. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, the polls are about to close in Florida. We are about to find out who will win Michael Waltz's seat. Elizabeth will be watching what's going on in Florida, 7 o'clock Eastern. I'll be back other side.
I'm Ashley Banfield, and you're listening to America's fastest growing cable news network, NewsNation. News for all America.
My take now, it's April Fool's Day, of course, so by now you've either been pranked or maybe have dished one out. But April 1st, by the way, also the date that David Grush, the former U.S. Air Force officer, UFO whistleblower as well, started his new job, working as a senior advisor for the Republican Congressman Eric Burlison. Now, keep in mind on this April Fool's Day that the JFK files were released exactly 2 weeks ago, and you'd be hard-pressed to cite any kind of major revelation. But when it comes to Grush and UFOs, I took a walk with the congressman last week and asked him this question, if he thought there would be some sort of aha moments.
I do think that we're going to find out some more information. The question is, will we get to that point where it's definitive that this is, we determine what it is? That I can't answer for you.
Now, Grush's new gig is for at least the next 4 months. But what's changed in the last 5 months could very well be the key. New president, new defense secretary, and vows of transparency. And many Republicans who have been asking questions, well, they now have a direct line to the Oval and a direct line to the Pentagon. Add to that a new senior advisor on the government's payroll. So now could very well be the time to get to the bottom of all those questions. Perhaps no joke. And that's my take tonight. We thank you for watching us here on The Hill. It is a big night in politics. We will break it all down tomorrow.